Hello, I'm Britton Clennett and welcome to China Insight, where we discuss the latest issues affecting this rapidly changing country. Well, you may have heard of leftover women, a phrase in China for women who are over 27 and haven't yet found a husband. But how about China's leftover men? Well, the country's one-child policy and a preference for male babies led to a gender ratio imbalance, which means that by 2020, it's estimated there will be around 24 million men without a wife. Well, today on the show, I'm joined by an expert on this topic. He's Professor Qiao Xiaochun from Peking University's Population Research Institute. Welcome to the program.
Yes.
So could you explain to me how big, how serious this issue of China's leftover men really is?
Oh, yes. I think that, now there are very serious problems, happen in China because, China have a long time high sex ratio at birth, since a family planning program. Then the number of the men increase very fast. It's very, imbalanced in China. So that's why the serious, the problems of the leftover men is very serious because, the men always try to find a woman whose education level is lower than him. So it's very hard for the men who are living in the rural areas, because they are low education. For the woman whose education level is lower, it's easier for them to find their husband because they look up. But for men, it's hard because they are the lowest educational level.
Right.
Then they try to look down. This is
and
very
what
normal.
you mean by looking down is that you need to appear appealing to women so that you
That's
can,
right.
in a sense, take care of their family and
this
the woman.
this is a Chinese convention.
Like you said, Professor Qiao, you have these ways that have been for generations.
That's right.
But you cannot deny the damage that was done by this family planning policy.
Yeah, that's right. With the imbalance of sex ratio, the problems would be more serious.
Right. Okay, well, Professor Qiao, that's something we looked into a little further. In some rural areas of the country, the situation has led to bachelors paying a price to tie the knot. Let's check out the following report.
The run-up to Chinese New Year. For millions of young migrant workers, the anticipation of a happy family reunion can be overshadowed by the prospect of some awkward questioning from parents and grandparents who want to know when they intend to marry. To help young singles struggling to find a partner, marriage markets are now found in many parts of the country, with only one item on offer: marriage-age youngsters desperate to tie the knot. Two singletons scouring one such market for a future wife are Lucy Gang and Pang Jianlong.
见面都是人家女孩子现在都待在家里，然后我们自己叫车到他们家里去。师傅呗，还联系下呀？要么你问我号码乱，我估计你乱我号码都没了。
This is Pang's third year looking for a wife at the marriage market. He insists the delay in finding a partner is not down to pickiness on his part.
只要他那个女孩子就是头脑没问题，别的就是个子呀、什么长相啊都无所谓了。
Yet some principles remain sacrosanct. For example, any suggestion of going against tradition by moving in with his wife's family and having their children inherit their mother's surname is met with a flat refusal.
家里人也会讲的。哦，这就是我们家里人不讲，这就是那些邻居啊什么的都会讲的。
而且现在我们这边到他们，我们还是要给人家交彩礼的。
Back in 2011, the typical bride price in Zhengning was 50 to 60,000 yuan. Now, though, it has shot up to 150,000, tripling within less than 5 years. Pang has heard about a girl in a nearby village who may be interested in getting married. So he pays for a car to take him and his matchmaker to her house. But the journey turns out to be a waste of time and money, as the girl is not at home.
他说过几天，过几天。
过几天呀？
啊，那个这个我就说不上来了。
那回头再看吧，那就。
那也只能这样了。
那今天是不是只有这一个？现在？
Concerned parents are a major source of the pressure felt by young Chinese to get married. Pang's father, who runs a fruit stall in Zhengning, is doubly worried, as neither of his two sons has yet found a wife. If and when he does, old Pang knows it will be an expensive business. This high cost is causing tradition to unravel. Now, in rural China, sons rather than daughters are seen as a big financial burden.
想不到我不打算想了，先在外面先就是买房子吧。
先买房子。
买房子到外地了。
到外地的。
是的。
As far as Lu, Pang and their friend Jiang Zhiqiang can tell, girls are most concerned about material needs, such as a house, a car and a good salary.
现在就不谈感情，结婚我就跟你说了，不谈感情。
This is the reality of marriage in much of rural China.
一大笔彩礼以外，还有其他费用嘛？在人家来说，你2个儿子还要人家1套楼房钱嘛？他要还张口要20万、30万都要。你说这个，你像我们做父母的咋活呀？
Old Zhao has, for several decades, been earning a living as a matchmaker.
这街上有50、60、那60、70娃都来了，都心里，可是没有女子，你给谁说的？
What this means, says Old Zhao, is that there is rarely a problem for the young women on his books to find a husband.
现在一般的女子就是下次女子都要求的好娃，女子生不下。
哦，都要男的，不要女的。
计划生育那个。
女娃都生下来。
90后，尤其是90后的这娃。
都要生个男娃，结果以后就是想到清楚的。
The gap between male and female birth rates has begun to narrow in recent years, but still a considerable imbalance remains. In 2015, the national average was 113.5 boys born for every 100 girls. With the odds so stacked in their favor, young women are increasingly coming in for criticism, for being too materialistic and making unreasonable demands in exchange for their hand in marriage. Pang's cousin, however, argues that things aren't always so simple.
我们这里有一个说法，你知道吗？就是整个甘肃可能都是这样的，就是说，女孩子，你要是女方家里直接不要彩礼的话，所有的人都会说你不值钱，别人也会看不起你，知道吧？
As the cost of marriage has skyrocketed, so have divorce rates, and the two phenomena are not unconnected.
那有些家庭要上一笔彩礼，婚一结，或一算走，男方还找不见，往往就是从到见面到我们这还有个订婚过程，对，到订婚也是有时候就是几天时间。
More than 4 in 5 divorces in Zhengning in 2014 involved couples who had been married for less than a year, and most cases centered on a dispute about the bride price. Xiao Liang and his ex-wife married soon after they first met.
可能就是10几20千吧。
But only a few days later, Xiao Liang's wife began complaining that she'd been forced into the marriage. She also confessed to having a boyfriend in another city. She then disappeared, taking with her the 58,000 yuan bride price. When after 6 months she eventually returned, Xiao Liang took her to court to recover the money. But he was unsuccessful. It turned out their marriage was invalid as they had been too young.
啥都没了，人财两空。说实话就是人财两空。
The episode has left the family's finances in tatters, and now they must face the prospect of raising another, probably much higher bride price for a new wife for Xiao Liang.
想办法嘛。
Even, it seems, if his son is unwilling.
来强点嘛。
Back in Zhengning, just as he was about to give up all hope for this year, Pang reports a positive development. It involves an old friend.
这个挺可爱的，这姑娘。
Lu Xigang's news is even better.
也是别人给你介绍的。
对对。
这和你前2天那个很失落的样子已经判若两人了。那你们接下来怎么打算啊？
接下来就是我跟家里面商量一下，然后去他家里面，跟他爸妈商量一下。
啊，会在今年年前就要结婚吗？
应该是吧。
对，
应该是啊。
对。
对，就1个月的时间。
啊，1个月的时间够了。
够了。
够了。
真的够了。
够了。
够了。
好，希望你们都能幸福。
谢谢。
So that last conversation seemed a little bit like a business transaction. You know, it was very frank. Is love in this situation, in these kind of circumstances, irrelevant?
You know, we have nothing to do with love. We only want a woman. It doesn't mean that they don't need love. They really need love. But the problem is that, you know, they have no chance, you know, to love someone. In China, the parents really hope that their son should carry on their family line.
So from the beginning, there's this, you know, this requirement for them to find this very practical solution, really just find a partner for life so that they can continue the family line.
Yeah.
But really, this takes it to the next level, doesn't it?
They only need, you know, a product. Then they should pay some money to buy the product. This product is very important to them, no matter how the quality of the product.
But you get a sense of the almost desperation here.
Yeah.
And demand is obviously extremely high.
Yeah.
Prices are going up.
Yes.
And in many cases, you know, the price that they pay for a bride is higher than their average incomes.
Yeah.
I just wonder how they can afford it to begin with.
I think that in rural areas, you know, most families could not afford, you know, such kind of price. They have to borrow money from others, from their relatives, from others, in order to get the wife.
Right.
You
so
know,
it's not coming just from them.
Yeah, not just for them. You know, almost every family, I think, they have to, you know, get money from others.
Okay, I wonder about this from a legal perspective, though. You know, what if something went wrong and, you know, the woman had decided to leave after 3 months of being married? What would happen then?
The problem is that, you know, their decision is not based on their love, just based on the money. The law cannot deal with the money.
Right.
You know, the law just deal with the marriage. So once they live together, they suddenly found that this guy is not fit to me, then they have to be living. You know, even that, you know, they could not give back the money. Every step is just meet the requirement of the law. So that's why, you know, law can do nothing for this.
And this, of course, becomes even more pertinent, these legal issues, when men buy their brides from across the border in Myanmar, and that's what we're going to discuss after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm with Professor Chao Xiaochun from Peking University's Population Research Institute, and we've been discussing China's leftover men and their quest to find a partner. Well, in some cases, China's rural bachelors are seeking brides from over the border in Myanmar. What's your opinion of this? You know, how common is it for them to do so?
You know, now it's quite common in China. You know, the men try to find a woman in China is still very harder. So then they have to think that how can we find someone who can be from other country? You know, because that might be cheaper than they find someone within China. So that's why they got this idea.
But of course, there's, you know, a plethora of problems that come from doing that, right?
Yeah.
In terms of legal, social aspects,
That's
financial
right.
problems.
Yeah, that might be more complex.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, the next report talks about some of the complexities involved in finding a bride in Myanmar. Let's take a look.
Yeah.
The village of Hocheng in the central province of Henan is home to 27-year-old Mai Su. While the young mother generally fits in well here, there is one detail that sets her apart from the rest of the community. She comes originally from Myanmar.
这俩孩子几岁了？大概5岁了。
他2岁7个月，反正。
啊，都是来了以后在这边生的是吧？
啊
啊，那你过来也得好几年了，有。
我来5年多了，还6年。
Just down the road in the neighboring village of Chenzhuang, we encounter Ai Mao. She arrived here from Myanmar 3 years ago.
那刚来的时候完全不会说吧？
不会说。
那你学得很快啊！现在是就语言上完全没障碍。
没障碍。
生活上有没有什么觉得不习惯的地方？
没有。
那在这儿会不会有时候也想缅甸那边想家？
啥也不想，就想家里妹妹。
Official statistics show that in Lushan County, where my and Ai's villages are both located, there are nearly 100 young women who, like them, were born in Myanmar but are now living here in rural China. Their situation became headline news at the end of 2014, when a gang of human traffickers was arrested by the Chinese police near the border with Myanmar. They were caught as they traveled in a convoy of minivans through the city of Roy Lee. 8 of Lushan County's Myanmar brides had been sold into marriage by this same gang. The China-Myanmar border is 170 kilometers long. The main roads across it are guarded by checkpoints, but not the numerous dirt tracks, rice terraces and ditches, which, according to the authorities, are regularly used by people crossing into China for illegal purposes, one of which is human trafficking. According to the Myanmar Times, 65% of the bride traffickers are women. 45-year-old Miss Yang from Dehong Prefecture in Yunnan on the Myanmar border is an associate of the gang arrested in Roy Lee.
我送的时候不知道违法，要知道违法我就不送了。
Of the 8 young women brought to Lushan by the gang, 3 have already fled, and 3 more are demanding to be repatriated. The other 2 want to stay. One of these 2 women is Mai Su, who after 6 years has no desire to leave, despite the fact that she was sold to her husband's family.
当时是我一个朋友，这个他说有没有那时候没有考虑着给儿子信这个缅甸的，他说你儿子信了没有了？我说没有的，然后没有了，我带过，听听都带过来人了。 你看看，那是第2天，他说人来了，一会儿都到这儿，你见不见见？我说见就见见，要么正好是我儿子下班，他们都一起去了。这个晚上他又过来，我说你要愿意了，你就准备钱，准备这个28000块钱。
这28000块钱是你这个朋友提的，这个数额
啊，是的。
这28000就分别都给谁了？
他可能给他媳妇儿5000块钱，
那等于23000他自己就留下了。
啊，是的。
这朋友叫什么名字？
我知道的，他是叫龙头，现在被公安局了，可能是扣着了，抓住了。
Dragon's Head's real name is Kong. He and his wife, along with 6 others, were part of the gang arrested in Roy Lee. Kong's wife, in turn, is related to Miss Yang. Their personal connection is at the heart of the operation that delivered Mai Su all the way to Henan province.
那肯定跟我一块去，我叫他认识杨太子，最后他们联系了。
给你钱了吗？他们？
给我1000多块钱吧，车费吧。
Yet in spite of the evidence, all of those arrested insist they weren't trafficking. They claim they were simply helping people find a marriage partner.
我们云南还有缅甸那边就说，帮人家牵成一个红线，夫妻成了是做了一场大斋是好事。
However, many of the Myanmar brides who have since been rescued by the authorities refute this claim. They say they were more or less forced into marrying their Chinese husbands.
到了内地了以后，该嫁什么人不是你说了算，是拐卖分子说了算，谁出的钱多就嫁给谁。
这些妇女呢，她在到中国的时候，她实际上是虽然想嫁到中国，但是是不同意嫁给那个买主的。人贩子在出售她的时候是不征求她的意见的。从法律上来讲，这种行为 就是借婚姻介绍实施的拐卖，它是拐卖犯罪作案手段的一种。
The traffickers are taking advantage of the prevailing social environment, a principal element of which is a ready supply of women on one hand and a high demand for them on the other. Myanmar is the second poorest country in Asia, with a per capita GDP of just over $1,000. For some people there, the prospect of working abroad and earning relatively good money in countries like China is very appealing. Yet, there would be no supply without demand, which is high on the Chinese side.
就像河南这一边，他当地，如果你当地的一个男子，你要找一个老婆的话，彩礼钱你要花，肯定要10万左右。然后什么，就像我们刚才讲的，还要有房，要有车，因为他买一个缅甸妇女最多花个3、4万。好一点的，我们看查到最贵的一个是6万多块钱买的，那个因为那个女的长得也漂亮一点，身材也好，还没结过婚的那种，那肯定就贵一点。他们的观念就是什么，只要那缅甸妇女能给她生个小孩，能给她传宗接代就行。
1 in 4 women trafficked into China from Myanmar is under 18. In many cases, they are sold by family members or people they trust. Most are desperate to return home. But for some like my Susu, who now have a family, leaving is less of an option.
好的嘞，不想回去了，回去。
So, we've just seen there the price of Myanmar brides and the situation to get one. I wonder how it's different from buying brides here in China.
The price is really different. It means that the price from other countries is quite lower than the price in China. So that's why, they focus their attention on finding someone from other, countries.
In some instances where people have been trafficked, smuggled across borders, there are cases of abuse, and there are cases of people who are brought against their own will, and there are cases of people who were in some sense, sold off by their family members or someone they know.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, this is a serious problem here, and should we, just kind of be turning a blind eye to it? Is it an ignorance that's happening here?
They depend on the both sides. One side that is their family. They sold their daughter, sold out their daughter to someone else. And in this part in China, someone try to buy, the bride, no matter, she likes this boy or not, then they just enforce them to do this.
Right.
The both sides have the problems. So that's why, it does mean that they are not ignorance of the law, but they have the demand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these women come over. Are they legally allowed to get married?
If they try to get married legally, then they need some proof. It means that they need some proof that this bride, cannot be married before. They also know that it's very hard for the bride to provide this kind of document. Then they still, knows that this boy is very difficult to find. It's not easy for them to find their wife. Then really they have a one. Then, they think it's okay. Then they register. So it means that they get married legally.
So we know then that there is a degree of turning a blind eye to all of this.
Yeah.
I wonder if it would just be better if there was a more simplified legal channel.
That's right.
In that way, then it could be regulated.
In China, we really should have the law to regulate each step of the marriage. So now there's almost no such kind of regulation. Some local areas, they have their own regulations, especially for somewhere their border is very close with other countries. But in the whole, level of China, almost no such kind of law.
Yeah.
So I think that this is very important for the Chinese government to have the law to regulate, such kind of marriage in order to, prevent someone from trafficking.
Okay. Well, I want to talk to you more about advocating solutions to this problem and of the Myanmar brides and perhaps the leftover men issue in China more broadly. Let's take another break first, and when we come back, we'll ask about the going price for brides and how people can afford them in the first place. Stay with us. Welcome back to China Insight. Well, Professor Qiao Xiaochun and I have been looking into the issue of China's unmarried men who are looking for brides and willing to pay for marriage. Well, China Insight asked people on the outskirts of Beijing how much it costs for a bride these days. Let's take a look.
25年前嘛，花了也就1万块钱，1万块钱买个电视，买个床，屋子里布置布置。现在变化大了，现在这物质生活水平都提高了，是吧？哎，就是这车呀、房啊。
我们两个是自己谈的，然后什么都没有买，
什么没有来？
自己家有房，然后就用自己家的房。
那你们周边的人现在就是结婚的话，是不是要花很多钱？
他爸他们家是山西的，然后彩礼的话基本上都是10万之上了吧，现在没有说特别便宜的了。
可能你刚开始提亲就得有几万块钱，好像有的到10万了。
那这些钱是从哪里来的？
都是自己的挣的积蓄啊，就是家里父母啊，年轻人的就家里父母啊。
我估计要跟亲戚借钱的应该占挺大一部分。
一年挣不到2、3万块钱，你说咱再给孩子买房，这房子现在都好几百万，咱连个厕所都买不上。
这个要求是合理的吗？
我感觉不太合理。
是吗？
我觉得就把那个婚姻啊、爱情弄得跟交易一样，我是挺反感的。
Marriage have just become a commodity. It's kind of what we were talking about before. I mean, these people have been on the, you know, they're kind of from the lower socioeconomic areas of Beijing, and they're still having to cough up these large amounts.
That's right.
What does that say about China and you know, this situation?
This is in Beijing. Beijing is not the worst. You know, even the people living in Beijing have these problems, and then
so you can just imagine how hard it is for many people in China, many men to come up with this money. Obviously, China has now scrapped the one-child policy. People are allowed 2 children. How much do you expect this to change the picture?
Once the people have more number of children, you know, it's easier. You know, it's have higher probability to have at least a boy. Changing the policy is the most important, then it's also good for resolving this kind of problems.
Thank you very much for coming on the program, Professor Qiao.
You're welcome.
If you have any comments or questions, please email us at chinainsight@cctv.com, or you can reach us on Facebook, Weibo and WeChat. And we'll see you next time for more stories and discussion on China out of China. Goodbye.